In this year of 2023, we have so much knowledge scientifically, ethically, personally, through experience on what dog training methods work and how we can help them the best so that we can coexist together in the best way in one household. But as more knowledge emerges, for some reason, more divisiveness occurs in the dog training community. And so today I kind of want to go over the misconceptions of specifically positive reinforcement-based training, which usually is the most recommended style of dog training from all, recognized dog training organizations and all good dog trainers, and something I strongly believe in. And the reason I wanted to do this video specifically is because there's so much misinformation out there. So I kind of want to set the record straight on why everyone should pretty much be using positive reinforcement-based training with their dogs, with any dogs. First and foremost, let's go over the quadrant of dog training. So the quadrant is pretty simple. We have reinforcement and punishment. Reinforcement is used to reinforce behavior that you want, and punishment is used to discourage behavior. Pretty much exactly how it sounds. And then we have positive and negative, and that's how we get the quadrant. So we have positive reinforcement, which is used to encourage good behavior by rewarding good behavior. We have negative reinforcement, which actually applies a negative stimulant to get what you want. So for example, this could be something like using an e-collar and pressing the e-collar until your dog comes to you. So you're using this negative stimulus to get your dog to do something that you want them to do, something I don't believe in. Then we have positive punishment. So even though the word positive is in there, this definitely is not a positive thing for the dog. It is applying something negative, a negative stimulus, a negative consequence when your dog does something not so desirable. So this could be something like popping the leash when your dog does something bad. Again, something I don't believe in. And lastly, we have negative punishment. This is something I actually do believe in, and it's the act of taking away something good to disencourage bad behavior. So a great example is if you're trying to teach your puppy not to jump. So when your puppy is young and they keep jumping on you, the negative punishment, you're gonna take away something good. You're gonna take away your attention on the dog. So when your dog jumps on you, you walk out of the room. That's a form of negative punishment. It doesn't have to require anything aversive. So yeah, that's something I often use. So when we're talking about positive reinforcement-based training, it's exactly that. It should be majority positive reinforcement, which is exactly how I believe as well. But it doesn't mean that you can't use negative punishment, like I just said, for things like biting, like puppy teething. Again, you could do the same thing, take away that attention. I just strongly believe, and again, as do all recognized organizations of dog training and good dog trainers, that positive reinforcement should really be at the epicenter of every dog training, course. And then you could sprinkle in some things like negative punishment. And again, some people that are balanced dog trainers, I get it. Everyone's trying to do what they think is best. And some people might believe in balanced dog training, which usually involves positive punishment, which again, I don't believe in. But even then, they should be keeping positive reinforcement at the center as well. So we all should be keeping positive reinforcement as the heart and soul of any form of training a dog. But even so, we still have people that are against positive reinforcement-based training, which I think is ridiculous. But let's get into some of the major misconceptions and the myths that are spread about positive reinforcement-based training, and then let's set it straight. The first huge misconception that I see, actually this is probably the most prominent one that I see all over social media especially, is that positive reinforcement can't fix, quote unquote, bad behavior, again, quote unquote, like barking or reactivity. Along with this, people think that it doesn't work because you're just masking the bad behavior with treats. So this is absolutely not true. First of all, fixing, quote unquote, again, something like reactivity is already the wrong mindset to have. And this is the mindset that a lot of positive punishment users have. It's like fix reactivity, punish this dog for lunging at that dog. But we have to go a little bit deeper and a little bit more psychological when we deal with problems that are undesirable, such as reactivity or pulling or barking. And when you get to the root of the problem, which is usually fear or anxiety, then you would know why positive reinforcement works, because we want to kind of rehabilitate the dog using positive reinforcement and really good experiences for the dog. And that's why we don't punish them anyway. So that already is wrong, that positive reinforcement can't fix, again, quote unquote, bad behaviors, because that's literally the way to fix it, is by helping them. And secondly, the misconception that positive reinforcement basically just masks dogs' bad behavior with treats is again super wrong, because in positive reinforcement, there is a really big nuance with timing, and timing is everything. So you might see maybe in one of my videos even, I think I made a video once on how to stop barking indoors, and timing is everything in that example as well. So someone that doesn't really know dog training or dogs that well might see me saying, okay, treat your dog here, as me rewarding my dog for barking. But actually, you have to reward your dogs in very specific pockets of time. So for example, if your dog's barking out the window, then he looks at you silently, that would be the perfect moment to treat. I get it that it looks maybe like you're treating them for barking, but it's not. And this is, again, scientifically proven. So yeah, it's not the case that positive reinforcement can't fix behaviors. It's not the case that you're just like putting treats in their mouth and rewarding bad behavior, stuff like that. It's all about understanding how dogs work, how training works, and positive reinforcement is simply proven to be the best way. The second very frequent misconception or myth, I guess that people say, is that you can't train a dog without being strict and without using, harsh punishments, just like you can't do with children. So first of all, I'm going to say I have no clue anything about like child education, raising a child. I'm not like well versed in that subject. But again, this is such a myth because first of all, you should not be comparing dogs to children. Yes, we should love our dogs just the same way that we love, our human children, but it doesn't mean that you have to raise a dog the same way you raise a kid. So just because you believe that kids should have consequences, and that's probably true, I don't know, it doesn't mean that the same philosophy applies to your dog. We have to remember they're entirely different species. They don't speak English. It's funny because people that say this are also the people that say like, oh, positive reinforcement based trainers treat their dogs too much like human kids. But then they're saying this myth as like, oh, you have to be strict with them just like you are with kids. So it's like, what is it? Do we compare them to kids or not? And the final answer is no, we don't compare raising a human child to raising a dog. So that's why the comparison ends right there. Just because you might believe in punishment for your human child, it doesn't mean that it works best for dogs either. And it's actually quite the opposite. The third misconception, and this is a hilarious one, is that you, the person, the human, needs to be the pack leader or the alpha for your dog. Simply put, the alpha theory was disproved decades ago. So the word alpha shouldn't even be coming out of any dog trainer's mouth. So definitely discount that entirely already. But second of all, this just isn't true. And I actually think it's quite the opposite. If you see yourself as more of like a pack leader rather than being someone to help your dog kind of navigate through the world, it's actually going to negatively impact your relationship with your dog. It's not going to increase the bond. It's not going to improve the trust between you guys, and it's going to negatively hinder your training, actually. The alpha theory was originally come up with by some scientist that was observing a bunch of wolves in a zoo. They put together a bunch of wolves from different zoos, from different families, put them into like a small enclosure together, and they observed that one alpha kind of emerged from that, or that the wolves were trying to be the alpha of the pack. But then a few years later, it was widely disproven because first of all, wolves in nature operate like families. There's like a mom, a dad, kids, and that's a pack. So there is no alpha already. And second of all, these were not wild wolves. These were like random zoo wolves put together in one cage. So the findings of this research were basically nullified. And then to go even a step further, wolves are not the same species as domesticated dogs that we have today in our houses. It's not even worth anyone's time to say, oh, I have to be the alpha, I have to be the pack leader to get respect from my dog. That's just not how it works. I don't know what else to say. It's not true. Why I mentioned this for a positive reinforcement myth is because the people that preach this are often the ones that also use physical punishments and aversive methods in order to, I guess, display that dominance over their dog. It's not necessary. Positive reinforcement is a much nicer, much ethical, and a very much more effective way to train your dog anyway. Another misconception I see a lot is that using force and aversive methods gets quicker, better results. So this one's actually really interesting because I get why this misconception exists, because in a lot of cases, aversive methods does appear to have quicker results. For example, if we're talking about reactivity again, if you're utilizing things like leash pops, like popping on your dog's collar with a leash, it might appear that your dog may stop having so many reactions over if you're using positive reinforcement based methods such as counter conditioning and desensitization. But the reason why this appears this way is because positive reinforcement based training for things like reactivity is focusing again on the emotional underlying causes. So it's creating a more permanent solution for this problem of reactivity. And once you work through the positive reinforcement based training, it's a more sustainable way for your dog to live their entire life, happier, calmer, less fearful, less anxious when they see these triggers. Then on the other hand, we have the non-positive reinforcement based way of treating reactivity, again with positive punishments. And the reason why it appears that this is faster is because your dog starts to suppress their emotions. So you're actually not helping them overcome their fear or anxiety of certain triggers. You're basically telling them, hey, don't display your fear and aggression or anxiety in this way. Don't let it manifest in reactivity. The problem with this method, so the not positive reinforcement-based method, is that your dog isn't actually emotionally rehabbing from this reactivity. You're just kind of like suppressing it temporarily. Think of it as putting a band-aid on something. Even if your dog doesn't go back to the reactive ways, his emotions will still remain the same. It'll still be elevated. Even if your dog does go his entire life without having reactions ever again, you'll still know that their emotional response is still not great. Positive reinforcement based might be slower. It might not seem as such a quick fix because it's not, because it's supposed to be more sustainable. It's supposed to be more of a rehabilitation, which is what your dog needs. And lastly, one of my favorite misconceptions is that treats are just bribery for dogs. And if you don't have treats, your dog won't do whatever you tell them to. So this is really funny because first let's address the bribery part. I get why treats might look like bribery to some people, again, that don't maybe understand positive reinforcement or how it works, but it's really not, because in the beginning, you might have to show your dog a treat to tell them to come or to, do anything. But after your dog knows a command, you shouldn't even be showing them the treat anyway. So you should be, keeping the treat in the pocket or behind your back and then giving it to them after your dog does whatever he was asked to do. So again, bribery doesn't even apply. You might have to bribe them in the beginning to make training easier, but in the long run, it's not bribery. It's just rewarding good behavior. You don't have to show your dog the treat every single time to do something. That's just not how it works. And then the second part, like if you don't have treats, your dog won't do what you want them to do in the future. This is simply not true. So on one hand, it's already been proven that like a lottery system of rewarding, so only sometimes rewarding a dog for doing something, is proven to be the most effective long-term way of training a dog for behaviors. And it's not just with dogs. I was reading a book called Don't Shoot the Dog. I think it's by Karen Pryor, like dog training icon. But yeah, she was saying how even when you train dolphins or something, the lottery system is just the most effective way and the best way to train a dog. But secondly, the reason why treats work so well in the beginning, especially of training, is that treats evoke a very positive response in dogs. And it's not just like as simple as saying, oh, a dog is happy because he sees, a piece of cheese. It's literally like your dog will associate this cheese with doing a certain command or with not doing a certain bad behavior. And it literally like is a hormonal response in your dog to make their emotions happy. That's why counter conditioning works. And that's again why positive reinforcement based training is a long-term rehabilitation style training. So it's not like one day when you don't have treats, your dog's just gonna be like, I don't want to do it. And also treats just make training more fun, engaging for your dog, which is ultimately what we want, right? And training is supposed to make life better for both us as the handler and the dog. And it also makes your bond stronger, which again translates into easier training in the future. And lastly, I don't know if I said lastly for the previous tip, but this is really the last one. A very common misconception is that positive reinforcement based training doesn't work for every dog. So I'll be honest, actually, I used to believe this myth because I've seen it everywhere. And again, like some really good dog trainers are balanced dog trainers, and they might do like 5 or 10% of their training is a little bit more of like a positive punishment style. But again, positive reinforcement based training is just scientifically proven to be the best. The speed might be different of how effective the training is, and that's totally fair. So yeah, speed is different. Same with reactivity. It depends on how reactive your dog is. It depends on what is causing your dog's reactivity. So again, the learning speed might be different, but positive reinforcement-based training works for every single dog. And for example, if it appears that positive reinforcement-based training isn't working, it's probably not the fact that it's positive reinforcement that is not working. You might need to be breaking down your training into smaller parts. You might need to be lowering the threshold of a trigger. There's a few other factors that go into it, but at the end of the day, science has shown us over and over again, positive reinforcement should be at the epicenter of every good training. These are not all the misconceptions of positive reinforcement-based training, so let me know if you want to know more. But for now, check out my recent video on some reactive dog hacks for you and your dog to make life easier, linked here on the screen.